So just as a reminder, right, if you show up here on Monday, no one else will be here, right? Monday is Labor Day. We don't have class. The university's closed. So the next assignment is for for Wednesday, right? So a week from today. I want you to read the first half of the Story of the Grail, which is in that Arthurian Romances book that I had you purchase, right? And Bethany, you will be then building a region for us, right? It'll be your turn on that date. Also, if you can complete the vocabulary quiz by Sunday at midnight, I promise that this time I will actually have it up. I'm not going to forget to do it this time. So that'll open up Friday morning. Just make sure it's done by Sunday at midnight. So does anybody have any questions about upcoming assignments or upcoming anything? Yeah, Kathy.
Is it possible for you to open it like maybe tomorrow morning? Because I'm actually gonna be traveling for the weekend, and I don't know like when I'll have time because it's a conference.
Okay. I probably won't actually have time to write it until tomorrow afternoon.
Okay.
So I'll open it up as quickly as I can.
Okay.
Yeah, I may not be able to I'll make it my first priority tomorrow when I get to work to
I
get
mean,
that
maybe
done.
I'll just find time and just do it while I'm in the conference or something.
Yeah, but yeah, I'll try to get it opened a little early then. Okay. Thank you for letting me know. Okay, any other questions about anything? All right, then Dalen, I believe you have a geographical region to describe to us.
Okay, first of all, my names for things are terrible, so just let it happen. I want to do mine kind of circular, so it's kind of circular. It's more like a paint splotch or something. And I did a mountain range over here where I said I wrote some descriptions down here to where you can get metals and stone from this top right area of the mountain range and stuff.
Okay.
I also put that there's a hidden monster in the tallest peak that can alter the climate if you bother her.
Oh wow.
I thought that'd be my little thing.
That's cool.
And I named mountains High Horse Mountains. Don't ask me why. I don't know. I don't know. I was listening to music. It was just, I don't even know what I was doing. Over here I did a lake. I called it Neon Lake. I thought that sounded cool. I also put little demon fish in there. I was in a monster mood, I guess. I literally just wrote demon fish. They don't have a name. They're just fish. There's a river coming from there called Demon River, because the demon fish, going towards this little town area. Did I write anything about the town? No, not really. Over here, I did a valley between the town and the mountains where they have a farm and their crops and stuff. So all of their farm animals and their plants and stuff will be over in here.
Okay.
Over here, I did a little forest. I just wood and building materials and stuff you can get over there, and monster mood. So there's a witch in the forest. Well, actually, I said that there's supposedly a witch, so either there is or there is not. It's a rumor.
Okay.
Who knows? But her house is over here with a question mark, because
Yeah.
That's pretty much all I did for now. The land itself is called Rosalia.
All right.
So that's about it.
All right. Well, I will bestow unto you the sacred colored markers and go forth and create.
Okay.
All right. So while she is putting that up on the poster board, let's get back to the 1001 Nights here. So I kind of want to start by just kind of drawing out the basic structure of what we've been looking at thus far, right? So from last time, we have the Shahryar and Shahrazad story as the main frame, right? This is the story into which all the others are embedded. And then within that, we have the story of, or the various stories of the merchant and his farm animals, right? The story of the merchant and the demon. The first old man's tale embedded in that. The second old man's tale also embedded in that. And did anybody notice anything weird about the third old man's tale on page 80? Or page 36, I mean. Yeah, sorry about that. I heard, O happy king, that the third old man told the demon a story that was even stranger and more amazing than the first two. The demon was very much amazed and swaying with delight said, I grant you 1/3 of my claim on him for his crime. So what's weird about the third old man's tale?
Doesn't like tell the story that he told.
Yeah, where is it, right? We're just told that the third old man told an even more amazing story, and the demon thus relinquished his claim on the merchant's life, right? So, what that probably indicates is that the third old man's tale is missing from the manuscript that Hadawi used for his translation, right? There are other translations that include the third old man's tale, but they're probably from later manuscripts that actually do include that story. Yeah, Grace.
So when someone is like translating
Uh-huh.
a story like this, would like the person who wrote this, would he be able to just like make his own story for the third old man's tale, or would that not be like what is the grounds for the rules? Like,
Well,
man,
I guess like there aren't really hard and fast rules in translation, and when you're translating a text like this, like we know from our discussion last time, right? The translators just added stories to this like crazy because they thought they had to get to a certain number. So yeah, I mean, I guess there's nothing stopping a translator from just like interpolating a story if they think one belongs here. But I think it's also kind of counter to Hadawi's purpose as a translator, right? So what he's trying to do here is give us a definitive version of a text that has always kind of defied any kind of definitiveness of any sort, right? And so adding a story here that's not in the manuscript he's working from would probably to him be a betrayal of that particular goal. But yeah, people have done all kinds of dodgy shit with this text throughout history, right? But the other thing that before like drawing out the rest of the structure, the big point that I want to make though about the merchant and the demon story, right? How is the merchant's life saved from the demon? Through what process?
storytelling.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, the merchant finds his life redeemed through the storytelling of the three old men, right? And then how does that mirror the Shahryar and Shahrazad frame story?
Is that Shahrazad tells stories every night until morning, and that's how she saved another day.
Yeah, it's pretty on the nose, right? that she is trying to tell stories to Shahryar to save not just herself but all other women in the kingdom, right? And we have a direct analog of that in the story here with the merchant and the demon, right? And then the eucatastrophe, in Tolkien's terms, that sudden happy turn, right? That sudden happy unexpected turn, is actually kind of like the arrival of the first old man, right? Who says, well, I can help you out of this predicament, right? And then we get two further eucatastrophes in the arrivals of the second and third old man. That is a fun word to say. It's less fun to write out. It's fun to say. Eucatastrophe. So then we move back outward again, right? Out of the merchant and the demon tale. Into the tale of the fisherman and the demon. And within that, the structure here actually gets a little bit more complicated, right? We have more layers within individual stories. Thank you, Galen. All right, we have the story of King Yunnan and the sage Duban. And within that story, we have the story of the husband and the parrot. And the king's son and the she-bull. Then we step back out into the fisherman and demon story again. And it sort of merges with that story of the young king, right? Or the story of the Enchanted King. So what I want to try to get at today is what kind of common characteristics these stories share that perhaps lead to building a kind of worldview or something we can consider a worldview, right? And that was one of the reasons I asked that quiz question today about the ethical stance that these stories seem to take, right? So what common elements do you notice running across these particular stories?
Adultery.
Okay, adultery.
Murder.
Murder. What else?
Lack of mercy.
Yeah, lack of mercy. Good. Yeah, mercy or the lack thereof.
Spells.
Okay, yeah. Almost all of them involve spells of some sort. Do we even notice a sort of common element among the spells? What do most of them seem to be concerned with?
Transformation.
Yeah. Almost all of the spells we see, right, not just in today's stories, but also the ones we read for last time, yeah, they're almost all spells of transformation. You're changing people into animals, or you're changing flesh into rock, right, or, some other such thing, right? With one perhaps notable exception. What's the weirdest magical event that we see in this set of stories?
They have talking.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. The kind of weird necromancy ritual with Duban's head, right?
I like that story. Yeah.
All right, anything else we notice as kind of common themes that run across these?
Revenge.
Okay, revenge. And that might actually be a good place to start here. Like, what seems to, like, does there seem to be a consistent attitude towards revenge across these? And if so, what might that be?
Pure hatred.
Okay, pure hatred. Can you give me an example?
King seemed to feel, before the storytelling, the king seemed to feel some type of way.
Okay.
Decided he blamed the entire female society.
Okay. Yeah.
I feel it's justified.
Okay, yeah. That is actually a distinction, right, between the types of revenge here. There is justified and unjustified revenge. For example, if we look at the story of King Yunnan and the Sage Duban, right? Is what the king does to Duban in any way justified? But is what Duban does in return justified?
Yes.
Yeah, the revenge that he gets on the king, yeah. At least within the moral world of these tales, right, seems to be looked on with approval, right? In fact, like the fisherman keeps repeating this verse to the demon. Right, he says, what the hell is it?
Can I add this, if you don't mind?
Yeah, sure.
I feel like depends on who's looking at it, it's all justified to them. Like,
Okay.
the king is justified for him to kill Duban because he heard all these things, so to him it's justified.
Sure.
To Duban is not, but then like when he does the things to the king, it's justified. So I feel like it depends on who's looking at it. So it's all justified, but also all unjustified.
Also that happens with the fisherman and the demon.
Yeah.
The demon's
Yeah.
like, oh, I thought this before you opened me up, so
Uh-huh.
I'm going to kill you.
Okay, so I'm just going to complicate what you said about the King Yunnan and Duban story slightly here, right? Does the reader know that Duban is innocent of all of the charges the vizier has laid against him? Yeah, it's made pretty clear that Duban didn't actually, like, he hasn't had a chance to, right? There hasn't been time. This vizier is jealous of him and tells the king a story to try to get him to turn against the philosopher who has cured him, right? So, what Yunnan is doing within the moral world of the tales here is repaying good with evil. And so Duban repays that evil with a pretty nasty vengeance, right? And that's the basic point of the fisherman's story to the demon, right? What is the situation between the fisherman and the demon? What's happened here?
He released it
Yeah,
on the jar.
yeah. Again, for no good, why does the demon want to kill him?
Because I feel like he's just bitter for waiting so long,
Yeah,
and that's why he wants to go.
yeah. He's if we go to page 41. Or page 40, sorry. Can I get somebody to read under the 10th night, starting with I heard, O happy king?
I heard, O happy king, that when the fisherman heard what the demon said, he asked, Demon, what are you saying? It has been more than 1,800 years since the prophet Solomon died, and we are now ages later. What is your story? And why were you in this jar? When the demon heard the fisherman, he said, Be glad. The fisherman cried, Oh, happy day. The demon added, Be glad that you will soon be put to death. The fisherman said, You deserve to put me to shame for such tidings. Why do you wish to kill me? I who have released you and delivered you from the I'm sorry.
It's okay.
I lost my place. I who have released you and delivered you from the bottom of the sea and brought you back to this world. The demon replied, make a wish. The fisherman was happy and asked, what shall I wish of you? The demon replied, tell me how you wish to die and what matter of death you wish to choose. The fisherman asked, what is my crime? Is this my reward from you for having delivered you? The demon replied, fisherman, listen to my story. The fisherman said, make it short, for I am at my rope's end.
Okay, so once the demon realizes that this person who had released him is not King Solomon, right? What's the decision he makes? What does the demon decide he's going to do? He's just going to kill him, yeah. But he'll let him choose how he wishes to die, right? He will have his choice of potentially gruesome deaths. So there's that. But this is completely unfair from the point of view of the fisherman and the broader text, right? I mean, what is the fisherman's crime here?
Releasing.
Yeah, no crime at all, right? All he's done is release this demon, which should be regarded as a good turn, right? Can I get somebody to continue reading here from The Demon Said, when the demon tells his story?
Demon said,
Thank you, Grace.
you should know that I am one of the renegade, rebellious demons. I, together with the giant Sacher, rebelled against the prophet Solomon, the son of David, who sent against me As-Iphibin Barchia, who took me by force and bade me be led in defeat and humiliation before the prophet Solomon. When the prophet Solomon saw me, he invoked God to protect him from me and my looks, and asked me to submit to him, but I refused. So he called for this brass jar, confined me inside, and sealed it with a lead seal on which he imprinted God's almighty name. Then he commanded his demons to carry me and throw me into the middle of the sea. I stayed there for 200 years, saying to myself, whoever sets me free during these 200 years, I will make him rich. But the 200 years went by and were followed by another 200, and no one set me free. Then I vowed to myself, whoever sets me free, I will open for him all the treasures of the earth. But 400 years went by, and no one set me free. When I entered the next 100 years, I vowed to myself, whoever delivers me during these 100 years, I will make him king, make myself his servant, and fulfill every day 3 of his wishes. But that 100 years too, plus all the intervening years, went by, and no one set me free. Then I raged and raved and growled and snorted and said to myself, whoever delivers me from now on, I will either put him to the worst of deaths, or let him choose for himself the manner of death. Soon you came by and set me free. Tell me how you wish to die.
So he has been clearly embittered by long captivity, right? But one thing to note here is kind of like the reputation of King Solomon that persists in fantasy stories, particularly of Middle Eastern origin. How is King Solomon described here? What does he seem to be here? What is he able to do?
Seal a demon.
Yeah, he's able to seal a demon in a jar, right? And what else can he do?
It seems like he's favored by God.
Okay, favored, yeah. Favored by God, and this permits him to do what sorts of things? How does he toss the demon out into the sea?
The demons.
Yeah, he summons demons of his own to send the jar out to sea, right? So the reputation of King Solomon in much of this kind of tradition is as a sorcerer, right? That he is a powerful sorcerer, but one of good intent largely, right? And he can do things like seal demons up. He can do things like, summon demons to fight other demons and so on and so forth, right? So again, like, a reminder that demons themselves in this context are neither good nor evil necessarily, right? But the demon has decided arbitrarily that he's just going to take out his anger on whoever opens the jar, right? Whoever that person is, whether they deserve it or not. When the fisherman heard what the demon said, he replied, To God we belong, and to him we return. After all these years of my bad luck, I had to set you free now. Forgive me, and God will grant you forgiveness. This is what I was looking for. Destroy me, and God will inflict on you one who will destroy you. The demon replied, It must be. Tell me how you wish to die. When the fisherman was certain he was going to die, he mourned and wept, saying, O my children, may God not deprive us of each other. Again he turned to the demon and said, For God's sake, release me as a reward for releasing you and delivering you from this jar. The demon replied, Your death is your reward for releasing me and letting me escape. The fisherman said, I did you a good turn, and you were about to repay me with a bad one. How true is the sentiment of the following lines. Our kindness they repaid with ugly deeds. Upon my life the deeds of men depraved. He who the undeserving aids will meet the fate of him whom the hyena saved. So, the problem here is the demon's ingratitude, right? He's been trapped in this jar underwater for centuries. This fisherman has finally set him free, and he doesn't appreciate the help in any way, right? In fact, he's threatening to kill the person who has helped him. At least in the story of the merchant and the demon, right? The merchant had killed the demon's son. He hadn't meant to, it was completely accidental, and there was no way he could have been expected to have known that he'd done it. But there was at least an offense there, right? Here we have someone who has done someone else a good turn and is about to be punished for it. So how does he get himself out of this? Yeah. So he gets himself out of it, again, through storytelling, right?
He also tricks him to go back into the jar.
Yeah, he also tricks the demon back into the jar. Yep. He says that God is endowed with, I'm a human being whom God is endowed with reason and thereby made superior to him. He may use his demonic wiles on me, but I will use my reason to deal with him. So what is this then suggesting to us about the way demons are conceptualized in this text?
They don't have reason, they just do. Like they don't have reasons for doing things, they just pick it and do it.
Yeah, apparently, they can use their wiles, right? So apparently they have some sort of cunning. But they don't appear to be able to reason. Right? They don't appear to be capable of higher abstract thought, right? And that is what the fisherman attempts to exploit in order to trick the demon. And then to give him examples of what happens to people who harm their benefactors, right? Which even within the story of King Yunnan and the sage Duban, right, the story of the husband and the parrot, right? The husband is deceived by the wife into killing the parrot, who has been good and faithful, right? And then regrets what he's done afterward when he learns the truth. King Yunnan never really learns the truth about the sage Duban. because he ends up licking the leaves of the poisoned book, right? And I think that's actually kind of an interesting thing from a fantasy perspective to look at here as well, right? So let's look at the kinds of magic with which Dubon here is associated, right? So what's Dubon's first deed for the king? What does he do for him?
Cures his
Yeah, he cures his leprosy, right? Right, we've got a king who is literally falling to pieces, and then the sage comes in and puts him together, or puts him back together, right? And how does he accomplish this? What does he do to cure the king's leprosy?
He puts medicine in mallet.
Yeah. Which will then be absorbed by the king while he rides around playing polo, right?
Does it say wallet or mallet?
Mallet.
Oh, okay.
So if we look on page 46, right, he tells him, race until you perspire, and the medicine will ooze from the grip into your perspiring hand, spread to your wrist, and circulate through your entire body. So not only is the medicine like absorbed rather than, say, rubbed on or taken by the mouth, right? The point is to circulate it through the king's entire body. Right, so the idea here of a kind of total cure, a kind of holistic cure rather than a superficial one. But, like the demon, what does the king seem to lack?
Reason?
Yeah. After the cure, Dubon determines that the king is neither bright nor just, right? And just seems to react to situations. So, you can cure the body, right? But you can't necessarily cure the mind, at least not with medicine. But the fact that so much of what Dubon here is accomplished through, say, herbs and whatnot, right? This is similar to Circe's practice, right, of pharmacon, or sort of magical medicine, right, in the Odyssey. And the way he kills is pretty much the same as the way he cures, right? The king licks the leaves of the poisoned book and absorbs the toxins that are thereon. Now, is there maybe also something symbolic in the use of a book to kill the king here? Yeah, go ahead.
Because apparently the king doesn't have reason, so therefore he's not as smart, but books are
Uh-huh.
symbolizing education and knowledge.
Yes, exactly. Right? Something that should be used for brain healing, right? Like in a lot of ways, seems almost like a last cruel joke on Dubon's part, right? It's like, all right, you dumbass, you refuse to read or to learn, right? So I'm gonna I'm going to make you read till it kills you. Here's the secret of secrets, you piece of crap. Now, let's also look for a second at the the resurrection of Dubon's head here. Can I get somebody to start reading on page 56? Starting with the king was greatly amazed.
The king was greatly amazed and said, "Is it possible that if I cut off your head, and as you say, open the book, read the third line, and speak to your head, it will speak to me? This is the wonder of wonders." Then the king allowed the sage to go and sent him home under guard. The sage settled his affairs, and on the following day returned to the royal palace and found assembled there the princes, viziers, chamberlains, lords of the realm, and military officers, as well as the king's retinue, servants, and many of his citizens. The sage Dubon entered, carrying an old book and a coal jar containing powder. He sat down, ordered a platter, and poured out the powder and smoothed it on the platter. Then he said to the king, "Take this book, your majesty, and don't open it until after my execution. When my head is cut off, let it be placed on the platter and order that it be pressed down on the powder. Then open the book and begin to ask my head a question, for it will then answer you. There is no powder and no strength save in God, the Almighty, the Magnificent. For God's sake spare me, and God will spare you. Destroy me, and God will destroy you." The king replied, "I must kill you, especially to see how your head will speak to me."
Okay, so pause there for a second, right? So before, the king was going to kill Dubon because he suspected him of treachery, right? Now, why is he so insistent on killing Dubon?
Out of curiosity.
Yeah. It's like, your head is going to do this cool thing if I have it cut off and I press it down in this powder? Right? That's awesome. Right? There's no way I'm stopping this now, right? Okay, keep going.
The king replied, "I must kill you, especially to see how your head will speak to me." Then the king took the book and ordered the executioner to strike off the sage's head. The executioner drew his sword and with one stroke dropped the head in the middle of the platter. And when he pressed the head on the powder, the bleeding stopped. Then the sage Dubon opened his eyes and said, "Now, your majesty, open the book." When the king opened the book, he found the pages stuck. So he put his finger in his mouth, wetted it with his saliva, and opened the first page. And he kept opening the pages with difficulty until he turned 7 leaves. But when he looked in the book, he found nothing written inside. And he exclaimed, "Sage, I see nothing written in this book." The sage replied, "Open more pages." The king opened some more pages, but still found nothing. And while he was doing this, the drug spread through his body, for the book had been poisoned, and he began to heave, sway, and twitch. Okay, honestly, in my opinion, he should have stopped because the head was already talking to him, you know? Like, okay, cool, you're already talking. I would have been satisfied.
Yeah. But yeah, so this is also like kind of not unlike the Nicaea ritual that we saw in the Odyssey, right? In which Odysseus, right, performs, the sacrifice of the ram and the ewe in the pit with the blood and all that in order to get the shade of Tiresias to speak to him, right? So why does one typically want to talk to the dead to begin with?
Answers?
Yeah, to get answers, right? Answers from the world beyond, right? Things that we can't see in the day-to-day. And indeed, at least up to a point, this ritual works, right? Just as the sage said it would. Once the head is pressed down on the powder, it comes back to life and starts talking. So the king is talking to a dead person. And he is still learning a lesson from a dead person, right? Just not the lesson that he anticipated. Right, so the head talks, but it doesn't actually give any information. It just tells him to keep turning the pages of a blank book. And so in this case, the dead person gets his revenge on the living by kind of like through trickery and through planting false information, right? So I do want to talk as well. We got about 20 minutes yet, and I want to talk about the story of the Enchanted King as well, because I feel like that's, like, in some ways it's the most straightforwardly fantastic, but it's also, I think, the most problematic for a number of reasons. So let's start with the fantastic elements of the story. What in particular do we note as fantastic or supernatural in the story of the Enchanted King?
He's half stone, half flesh.
Okay, yeah, on the one hand, there's the transformation of the king himself, right? What else about this particular story strikes us as fantastic?
The fishes, the 4 fishes, when they get cooked a person.
Okay.
And then closes. It's like an opening a portal and they're like, hey, you're gonna do this? Yeah, I'll do it when you come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The talking fish and the portals, right? Yeah. Now, this also kind of plays into those cannibalism themes as well, right?
Yeah.
Because what are the fish?
Human. They're the
Yeah.
Christians, the Jews, I've read the other 2.
Yeah, so they're the transformed citizens of the Enchanted King's city, right? And yeah, they're the Muslim, Zoroastrian, Jewish, and Christian citizens of this city, right? You know, they turn into a different colored fish depending on their religion, right? And the city is transformed too, right? The city has been transformed into a lake.
Also, once the spell is like broken and the king gets his like body back,
Uh-huh.
the city becomes a year distance away as opposed to
Oh,
like
in
the
the
danger.
Yeah, in addition to the transformation of the city into a lake, it's also like the whole geography of it has been changed, right? It's been kind of displaced from where it belongs. Yeah. There's been a kind of movement in both space and time there. And it's also kind of interesting too. Like apparently this is a day away from the other king's court, right? But nobody in his court has ever heard of this place, right? They all have no idea about it. And they only find out about it because the fisherman brought them his weird fish, right? So what's problematic about this? Like what's potentially troubling about this story?
The cannibalism.
Yeah, the cannibalism, sure. That they're just going to fry up those fish, right? And apparently, you know, after those fish are charred, right, those people remain dead, right? Even if nobody actually eats the fish.
The wife, she like had an affair and then he
Uh-huh.
tried to kill the slave and he didn't actually die. Like he tried to get his revenge and he didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, the young king actually fails to get his revenge, right? So let's actually take a look at that. Right, he brings it like his wife has stolen his sword for one thing. If we look on page 71, right, he grabbed the sword that my wife had brought with her and drew it, intending to kill both of them. I first struck the black man on the neck and thought that I had killed him. And then further down, I heard, O king, that the enchanted young man said to the king, my lord, I struck the black man on the neck, but failed to cut the 2 arteries. Instead, I only cut into the skin and flesh of the throat and thought that I had killed him. He began to snort violently, and my wife pulled away from him. I retreated, put the sword back in its place, and went back to the city. So, again, thinking back to our discussion of the Odyssey, right? What does a sword often represent?
Masculinity.
Yeah, it's a symbol of masculine strength, power, fertility, right? The sword is a very, very common phallic symbol. I think it's also probably important that, the wife has been giving him a poisoned drink every night, right, to make him sleep. The cup being, right, a yonic symbol or a symbol of female sexuality, right? Now, so what that the young king here fails to strike with his sword?
That means the person that she was with is probably more masculine and more pleasing to his wife than he is.
Yeah, and in fact, we can pretty much tell that that's the case right throughout here, right? She seems to genuinely love the man that her husband tries to kill, right? And to genuinely hate her husband. And because of perspective here, we don't really know what her side of all of this is, right? We know that she's a woman who is using magic and transforms her husband. And again, kind of related to the whole failure of the sword thing, what half of his body does she turn to stone? Yep, he's turned to stone from the waist down, right? And then, she tortures him every day afterward, right? So, yeah, we have in the young king kind of stripping away of masculinity and of masculine power, right? But yeah, I mean, I will admit, I find something a little bit cringy about this particular story because of the way it treats the relationship between the wife and her lover, right? We get more insight than we do to the relationship than we do in other adultery tales in this collection, right? But yeah, there seems to be genuine affection, at least on the wife's part, for the beggar who is her lover, right? She would rather go to his hovel and eat fried rat bones than eat the sumptuous feasts that her husband lays out for her, right? And, there's no real indication of sexual relations between husband and wife there, right? Because she knocks him out every night. So that she can go and see the lover. But the way the narrative is structured, right? Whatever the story is there, he's right and she's wrong, right? He's good and she's bad. So he is to be rescued and she is to be punished, right? Once she is tricked into releasing releasing all of him and all of the inhabitants of the city and the city itself from the spells that she's put upon them, right? So the other thing that's problematic about this is that it doesn't seem to fit all that well thematically in some ways with these other stories, right? That have all been about, either a good woman rescuing rescuing a man from a bad woman, right? Or that have focused on, showing mercy to the weak. In this case, we have a king who rescues another king from his wife. Who is in love with a slave. So in terms of content, it kind of fits with some elements of the frame story, right? But otherwise, it seems a little bit off. Now, I think, and this is just kind of like the best that I can do with this, And, it may kind of just be some of that, human need to put things into patterns, right? I think there actually is a way that this is in dialogue with the other stories, despite the obvious thematic differences here. Yeah, Kathy, what were you going to say?
Oh no, I was just thinking like, it goes along with the story because it stems from the fisherman and the demon.
Okay.
And of course the whole connection with the frame story and everything. But then I was really thinking like, I was surprised that Charizard, she's still alive after this story. Because if I was the king, I was like, why are you telling my story in a different context? I'm gonna have to kill you in the morning. That's what I was thinking, yeah.
Yeah,
she's bold.
Yeah, you're right. It actually does seem almost like a deliberate provocation, right?
And I think after the story, he doesn't say, oh, I'll kill her the next time. He ends up saying, I have to know the story, and I'll keep her alive for the next month or 2 more months.
Yeah,
So
however
that's
long
the
it
big
takes.
change,
Yeah. So yeah, I like that. Yeah, that it's almost like rubbing it in his face. Yeah. Is that a hand up, Grace? Or you just stretching?
Well, it was a stretch and now it's a hand up.
Okay.
So, have you finished the story, like the whole book?
Yeah.
So, okay, I'm not asking you to spoil it. It's just the whole time I'm reading this, I'm trying to understand, like, if Shahrazad, if she's just trying to stall her death, or like subliminally, like, tell him all of these stories with like all of these like intertwined with like morals and ethics and like and trying to like make him like realize I should stop killing all of these women.
Yeah, and
or if she's just trying to stall as an issue.
Yeah, and if we think about the story about the merchant and the animals, right, the merchant and his wife, right? What was the definition of good management in that story? That the vizier tells to Shahrazad to try to convince her not to go through with this. How does the merchant learn to manage his wife? Just by beating her into submission, right? And we can look at these other stories in terms of finding ways to actually learn good management, right? And I'm not quite sure about this reading of the story of the Enchanted King, but I think that given kind of like the themes of emasculation here and the way the youth of his appearance is emphasized, I think that the issue there is immaturity. Is that he's regarded as like, it's sort of painting him as kind of like too young and too inexperienced to take on responsibility. Because what happens to him at the end of this?
Who?
To the Enchanted King, once he's been transformed.
He goes with the king, and the king raises him as his own son that he never had.
Yeah, he gives up his kingdom here, right? And he goes to live with the other king as a subordinate, right? Sort of to be educated as a king, to learn how to be a king, from someone who is apparently able to execute these duties more successfully before he can actually be allowed to rule over anything. And the fisherman gets his rewards and all that too, yeah. But I think to get back to your more immediate question, Grace, like as far as like reading the whole book is concerned, this is kind of one of those texts where there's really no such thing as reading the whole book, right? There really isn't an ending. There is an end that like later manuscripts tack on, in which Shahrazad has completely reformed the king, and he no longer wants to chop people's heads off, and by this time they have several children. It's been, however many years later, right? How many years is 1001 Nights? That's a little over 2.5 years, right? So, yeah. So, at least in this particular manuscript, right, there is no end, really. There are just a bunch of stories that are grouped together under this loose framework. But yeah, I think that you're right, though, that they are all kind of concerned with this notion of what it means to be a good and just king. And that it's about, in a lot of ways, it's about like not harming people who are under your power, right? And not returning good deeds with evil. Okay, so we're running close to time. Does anybody have any other questions about this or anything they want to say? Okay, so we're going to be moving next time from the medieval Middle East to to medieval France, Britain-ish. The distinction between medieval France and medieval Britain is sometimes merely an academic one, because the British king ruled more of France than the French king did.
Strike that, reverse it.
In the 12th century, which is the period we're going to be talking about next time we look at the story of the Grail, the King of England actually ruled more of France than the King of France did.
Okay, so it sort of switched after the Normans invaded.
This is still post-Norman invasion, but yeah, after the Norman invasion, the kings of England are basically French, and they were also very powerful. Like they had a lot of other titles and lands in France, and actually controlled most of the country.
Okay, so French king French king over England rules most of France.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.